Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good morning, Professor. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. How are you?
Tired, but yeah, I'm just.
Before we get started, I wanted to let you know you're probably aware of this already, but this review will be streaming live on YouTube.
Okay.
So it's in because we're not having physical public reviews. Um, we are streaming, and I don't know if you've had a chance to watch any of them, but all the reviews have been streamed. So I just want to make sure that you are okay with that.
Of course,
Are
yeah.
you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Okay, great. So the session is already live
dilators, which forces water from the lake into it through the currents created by the people who kayak. When the water is pushed above the incline, the air pressure creates sound vibrations, which is released through the small openings over here, and creates a melody of sound vibrations. This space encourages people to inhabit it and spend time reflecting and breaking away from unhealthy habits. The wood shop here again, it's a woodworking space with individual studio spaces for people who want to work in it in seclusion, and a communal space for holding workshops where people teach you how to use hand tools for both civilians and veterans. And the location of it advocates calm and focus and acts as a form of distractive therapy. So I also created So that's what the material palette of the space would look like with wood and terrazzo tiles. These are the tiles that are used within the indoors and the entrance stairwells to make it stand out from the rest of the space. And then there is wood and metals. And I also create, with the current events that we are facing today, I created a social distancing strategy because and tried to reimagine what the cafe space would look like. I took certain aspects of the cafe, reduced the seating counts over here in these spaces here, and created circular glass full height units with openings facing different directions. Like some of the openings faced here directly, some of them through here, some of them through the back, and some of them through the side. The design element is more concentrated in the design of the floor patterns, which give these abstract lines that converge and diverge. This basically acts as a boundary which guides the crowds into these spaces through its converging and diverging nature. Now, this is represented through this visual here, where these act as a transitionary boundary which direct people by nature to stand in these boundaries and be directed, and these lead directly into the openings of these glass units. And that's it.
Thank you, Maryam, for your presentation.
Welcome.
Thank you, Maryam. Really clear presentation. It was really, I mean, I really like how you took us through the space. I just have a few questions before anything, like how are you applying the materials in the interior? Where you show us the material palette, but can you run us, maybe you've said it, but can you wrap up a little bit like how those decisions?
So we already have existing concrete within the space. So I tried to apply the materials in the main highlights of the design, such as the.
Maybe the perspectives are the best place to show us like one of the interior perspectives.
Yeah, like over here. So these are the terrazzo tiles which demarcate the spaces from the rest of the spaces. So it acts as a highlight, like this is different. And then wood has been used in the stairwell, which reaches above ground. So these act as a transitionary space, segregating it from the rest of the spaces. And each stairwell has a different style of terrazzo. So one is red and one is more pink, towards pink, which gives a sense of differentiation, especially for service members or veterans who try to find dissimilarities, but find connections which segregates certain things from others to remember them better.
Well, I think it's. I really like your design. I think I think it makes sense, your choice of site. I think the organization is very clear in plan. The way that you're segmenting this elongated building in these different bands according to different programmatic uses, but then also how you have emptied some. Three major points to allow light to flood in, and how even the design of the stair being so porous allows for the light to flood in all the way from the roof. So I assume these, Maryam, these are open to the elements. These these atriums?
Yes, they are definitely open.
So I think it's, and then here in this image that we have on the screen, is there like a partition between the stair and the?
So these abstract forms, I can explain this through this section better. These abstract forms are ropes, like ropes which act as abstractions and acts as a partition in itself, which segregates the spaces, the contemplative spaces from the stairwells.
So
but it looks like in this section that there is glass kind of skylight above the stairs, so it's not open to the sky. It's not open to the elements. It's open to light, right? So it's it has a glass boundary.
Yes.
So
okay.
it's so that the space of the 2 of the 3 stairs is conditioned.
Okay.
There is just one which is in the gap between the 2 buildings that's open fully.
Yeah.
Like you see that one is fully open.
This is fully open to the outside, whereas these are situated indoors.
And that's an existing condition, really, a gap between 2 buildings.
Yes. Well, I think that I think those are all great decisions. I mean, I think now looking at those skylights, maybe they will need a little bit more rethinking or studying in how they're actually designed. That it's difficult to have a flat plane like that of glass, no, and it gets dirty, like rain, etc. The way it collects is a little bit, it could be a bit of an issue. So to think about sloping that in some way, I mean, there's some aspects that could be designed a little farther. Also, I think for you, as in like how to wrap up this project, I think that to have a document that allows allows the audience to understand where the materials have been applied, that would also help. But what's your strategy towards that? But overall, I think I think it makes a lot of sense, and I would want to come to this space. I think yeah, I think in terms of, for example, funding, I see this space. I don't know how you see like this working, but it seems like it's like very desirable location for weddings also and things like that, or kind of celebrations because of its location, as in something that maybe could help raise funds. Because so to think about some of these spaces, instead of thinking so strictly in terms of this is the work, I mean, this is the workshop needs to have equipment. So that's probably thinking which of these programs that you have already designed could work for a different series of events, which I think is something that is already there. So that doesn't require a lot of design changes, but that could, as a proposal, I think could think about that music space and those like presentation areas are something that could potentially be open to other publics in the city, and also be capitalized to raise funds for this community.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Thank you, Professor. Much appreciated.
I agree with a lot of the comments that Professor Felice has offered this morning. There's a lot of things that I think work really well. I think the overall organization is quite successful. Again, similarly, the site selection is also a really good ideal location for something like this, given its context to the lake, and for everyone to sort of, it's quite magnetic. You know, everybody wants to come to this particular space, as well as all of the services that are around it. I think that the acoustic element is also quite wonderful. I can imagine that having a lot of desirable qualities for virtually everyone who experiences it. I'm really curious about some of your choices in terms of pattern and color within the space. And maybe we could go back to one of your one of your perspectives. One of your, yeah, maybe that's a good one, because we've been looking at the stair for a little bit. So you talk a bit about situational awareness, and you also walked us through, there's the also very much really liked your booklet. So I spent a little time looking through your booklet this morning from last semester. You showed us the image again this morning that shows how a soldier might experience a sort of common space, the difference between the grocery store and kind of their experience of it. And I would be really curious to know what someone who has PTSD, what lens, if we kind of filtered this space through their lens, what would they see? What would they experience? I find it a really lovely space, and I would want to hang out there and meet friends there and go to the cafe and all of those things. I'm really curious though, how you envision, based on your research, how would kind of through the lens of someone with PTSD, how would they see this space? How might they experience it?
So again, like I mentioned earlier, the space has not been, for people with PTSD, I wanted them to have an experience, like strategies like open layouts, having spaces with controlled crowds, like creating the layout in such a way that there's no overcrowding. All of this has been taken into account, keeping in mind what they face, and like the direction of the building, like keeping activities such as the woodworking facing spaces of strong light, which have direct connection to the outdoors. So these are the strategies I implemented with like the placement of the activities. Yeah, that's how I implemented these strategies to make them feel as calm and like not alert. And for example, the layout of the space, so like I mentioned before, aspects of sound are major triggers for PTSD, such as a blaring horn. So for that, providing design solutions such as a forest veil up front through the trees would help control the amount of noise that comes into the space in itself. So that would help, reduce that, reduce moments, reduce triggers basically. So it's and diffuse symptoms like through the activities of focus, and through such as the art therapy or the contemplative space and the woodworking.
And I absolutely agree with you on those aspects. I guess what I'm picking up on, if we go back to that perspective, is there's a great deal of visual complexity to the space. There's a lot of patterning. There's a lot of actual kind of permeability to the space, where there's sort of different layers of the space coming together. We also sort of experience it in the stair, the stair perspective too. Like I can't, in the stair perspective, I can't quite tell if some of the lines have been added to the perspective for kind of graphic impact, or if they actually all are being created by shadows within the space. But I'm sort of thinking about the visual complexity of the space is quite stimulating to me, to sort of the average person who doesn't have this particular condition. And so I'm wondering how that sort of complexity, how it would stimulate someone who has PTSD, as opposed to a space that's visually calmer in a way.
Okay. I think one of the things I was looking at when I was designing the space is not to have hard boundaries or walls as such, which would segregate spaces from, because like I said, one of the things that is one of the triggers of PTSD for veterans or service members is that they feel a claustrophobic sense when they don't know what's beyond a boundary, because and they feel this certain sense of anxiety. So because of that, I tried to reimagine what boundaries are, and create thresholds which are permeable, which provides visual access to all the spaces around them. So
yeah, and I think that's successful in a lot of different locations. I'm not quite sure if you're quite understanding my comments, but I do question the visual complexity Although I think it's quite beautiful and wonderful space that a lot of people would want to be in. I'm just thinking about your very specific demographic in that sense.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a similar comment or a thought that I had as well, because I think, I mean, maybe in a simpler way, like it appears to me that your agenda in dealing with PTSD is more programming based.
Mm-hmm.
It's about providing services, and so like it's designing a suite of programs and services that are accessible through this space. And I think that's one direction to go. I think it's still unclear what that suite adds up to. I think it's like, it makes sense intuitively to me, but I mean, I think for a research project, you would have to really, I think you need that layer of specificity of the program or the service that's provided and the aspect of PTSD that it's engaging. You clearly know this stuff because every question answering really quickly, and so like I don't deny or think that you haven't looked at these issues. I think you have. I think it's just unclear in terms of the presentation.
Okay.
So like I would go back to add in or fill in those gaps a little bit, because I do think it's primarily a service-based or programming oriented kind of address of PTSD, which actually makes a lot of sense. I think this is I've always wondered about your project since you brought it up. Like, where does design fit, relative to these kinds of questions? And I think like even like the statement you just made about porosity or openness or lack of hard boundary between things. Like for me, like what I would like to see in that way is then a study of boundary that addresses visual access into spaces beyond, right? And I think you've done that. It's just unclear, what the methodology is. Like ropes is one way to do it, but there are other sort of like less specific ways that you could start to think about that. And I think that's another area you could go back in and start to fill in a little bit of the gap between like the resolution that we see, which is beautiful. And I actually really think this is a good intervention in the C home. I've done a proposal for C home as well many years ago, and I think this is a pretty well thought out kind of intervention. So I applaud you from that perspective. But I think from a research perspective, going back and connecting the dots between sort of an observation about here's a part of the disorder. Here's how I'm going to address that disorder through programming, and here's how I'm going to address it through space, material, organization, all of that other stuff, right? And so, like, to me, that's a little bit unclear right now, but I think the impulse is one to be applauded, and I think the some levels of the resolution is really clear, and others aren't, and that's fine. But I would go back and look at those issues because I think the project deserves that. But I do appreciate the work, and I'm really happy to see where it came out. And also the booklets are beautiful. I'm with Tammy. I went and looked at it this morning, and I was like, I thought it was the final booklet. So
it's excellent. Yeah,
I was pretty happy until the end when I was like, oh, where's the project at the end? And I was glad to do it, but in my silly way. But like I do like the graphic sensibility. To me, that shows a designer's thinking, and as much as the content itself. And so like I applaud the sort of holistic aspect of the project. But those would be the areas I would go back and sort of clarify.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor Glass.
Yeah, maybe in your booklet, adding these perspectives and adding the planning, and then going in and with another layer of actually pointing out, like, show us and point to the things that you've done that actually pick up on the research,
Okay.
whether it's through a separate set of diagrams like Professor Odom is recommending, or even just showing us a perspective and pulling out and pointing to the things that the certain features or qualities or finishes and those things that are specifically chosen because of some sort of research-based decision making that you've had.
Okay.
So I think that would be really helpful for your booklet and make it a more convincing argument as you go out kind of beyond and start showing this to others outside of the school.
Thank you, Professor Glass. Thank you.
I mean, I think, Clay, were you going to say something?
Just one other thing right quick, and it's just about the images themselves, because I think the images are seductive in their schematic kind of like looseness, but also challenge you to do some more like realistic renderings of this so that we can understand the materiality and the spatial qualities relative to human perception in a more direct way. These are seductive in as sort of drawing slash renderings, but I think for something like this, you'd want to be even more realistic about like light quality and materials, and because I think it would actually calm down in reality. And so like some of the questions about busyness might be, you know, fixed just by looking at it through a real rendering process.
I agree.
Okay.
You know, I think you took on a very difficult challenge from day one, from last summer, to take on such a complex topic outside of your own field, and then to constantly figure out what is the next step. And I think all these steps have brought you quite far. That now, after so many steps, we can actually talk about renderings. I mean, it's amazing, you know, to start so far outside of your own field, to start to have to learn new tools, new ways of looking, constantly connected back to or scaffolding upon what you already know. You know, I think it's been quite a journey, and I know that now all the things that we're talking about, you have the tools and the experience to fine tune. And so I am personally, having kind of observed this year-long journey, happy that this is where you've arrived, because now you know what to do. I mean, there have been a lot more unknowns to try to figure out how to position yourself, how to take this on, how to position yourself, how to work. And you have done all of that, you know, and I think that as a post-professional student in the interior design program, I think that these 2 years have really transformed you and your work, and I think also us as a program. I think I really appreciate that you have kind of discovered a passion for social engagement through design, and that as an international student, this has been such a you know, an important experience in your own trajectory, and that includes, you know, having taken other studios at our school, taking coursework within our school, and also across, you know, across the university, like the School of Social Work. Your internship at Gensler, where you worked on the issue of homelessness, like it has all added up in a really beautiful way. And so I really encourage you to continue pursuing this passion and to be a person who is able to connect the dots between, you know, what we do as a field and kind of broader social intentions. So I'm very happy to see you arrive at this point. So congratulations.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much.
Any last comments before we go? Do you have any questions, Maryam? Yeah.
Thank you, professors, for taking the time to listen to me. I mean, it's been it's very hard with everything that's going on, and it was very challenging to concentrate on work. But yeah, I'm happy that this is where I've reached. I know there is always space for improvement, because that's what design is. But yeah, I'm very thankful to Professor Igor for taking the time to sit with me through all my feedbacks and guiding me, and for you all for taking the time today to come here and sit and listen to me, of course.
Yeah, it's a very solitary experience already. I think going through the NDS and then have the added pressures of the things that have happened this semester. And I think that you've done an excellent job of navigating all of that and coming out with a product in the end that we can have a very sophisticated design conversation about. You should feel very proud about your time at UT and your accomplishments. Congratulations.
Thank you, professors. I really wish that it was I mean, it's a last review and I didn't know that I'm not going to be in campus anymore. So I'm not going to experience my last day on campus. So yeah, that's the sad part.
But we will have you come back. Next time you are on campus, you can be an MDS thesis reviewer. We will invite you back to talk about other students' work with your expertise.
Thank you. Yeah, I look forward to that. Yeah, that would be really an interesting experience. Thank you, professors. Once again, thank you for taking. Thank you, Professor Igor. Thank you, Professor Feliz. Thank you, Professor Glass and Professor Odin, for taking the time to be here today.
You're welcome.
Thank
All right.
you. Yeah. Congrats.
Good luck. We
Thank
will be in
you.
touch. Thank you, everyone.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye.